Hey again. I want to start with a quick recap of Descartes since it's been about 2 weeks since we've seen each other. I want to make sure that we remember where we've left off. So this is just a short video recapping Descartes' meditations. Recall, in the meditations, we started with Descartes in his poella, in his stove-heated room, alone, isolated, reflecting on the foundations of human knowledge, the very foundations of what he knows. He's calling into question everything in order to be sure that knowledge rests on firm foundations, on certain truths, truths that cannot, in the end, be doubted. It is only if there are such firm foundations that we can claim, Descartes thinks, to have any knowledge whatsoever. Because if it rests on anything less than these firm foundations, well, like a house that rests on faulty foundations, it's bound to crumble. We're bound to find ourselves in error. So we can only trust our knowledge if it rests on such firm foundations. So he isolates himself in this stove-heated room, in this poella, and he thinks he's going to begin by first trying to doubt everything he has ever known. He's going to take himself through what I'm calling the skeptical progression. He begins by noting that most of what he knows, he's either been taught by others, or he knows on the basis of his sensory experiences. But others have lied to him in the past. The testimony of others has misled him. And his senses have misled him in the past. He's found himself driven into error by his senses, led to error by his senses. So he decides he'll trust neither testimony nor his senses. And as such, he finds he cannot know any particular matters of fact. He cannot know that there is, in fact, a brown desk sitting in front of him, or that there is, in fact, a green bottle on the table that we used to be able to see in our classroom. All matters of fact are now called into doubt. But this still leaves much that could be known. He still thinks I could know abstract truths about objects. I could know, for example, that desks are physical objects that are extended in space. They take up space. They have dimensions. They have various surface properties. They reflect light in various ways so that I see them as a particular color. These abstract truths are still not called into doubt. For this, Descartes takes an additional step. He says, I can't know that I'm not dreaming. I can't know that this isn't all just a figment of my imagination. What if it is? What if this is all just a dream? What if I am living in the Matrix? If that's the case, if it's all just a dream, then my beliefs about abstract objects, or about objects, my abstract beliefs about objects, are false. They're universally false, because they are not beliefs about what these images seem like to me, but beliefs about what they are, what they represent to be the case. But they don't represent anything if this is all a dream. They don't map onto the world in any way. So I cannot know abstract truths about objects, that they're extended in space and have various surface properties, because it's possible that I have the experiences that I have. Things appear to me as they do, even though no such objects exist. To does that leave anything left to be believed? Descartes says yes, in fact it does. It leaves us with the possibility of knowing a priori truths about mathematics and geometry, for example, that 2 plus 3 equals 5, or that a triangle has 3 sides, that a square has 4 right angles. These are things that I don't have to have any experience whatsoever in order to know, and that don't represent any objects out in the world as being a particular way. They just are ideas in my own head. These are things that I cannot possibly doubt, right? Well, maybe. But what if I can't trust my faculty of reason? What if I can't trust my intellect that guides me to these beliefs? The only reason I trust in it is because, if I am Descartes, I think that an all-loving God has made me in such a way that God would not want me to be deceived about these most basic truths. But I can't know that God is not deceptive. I can't know that God is not deceiving me in this very moment. So I can't know even these a priori truths of mathematics and geometry. Descartes gives us a different argument for this same conclusion, though he presents it as a kind of heuristic, a device that he's going to use to sustain this radical doubt throughout the rest of his meditations. He says he'll imagine an evil deceiver who's set to deceive him in all of his beliefs. And since he can't know that this deceiver does not exist, it seems that he can't trust any of his prior beliefs. This evil deceiver, this evil demon, could make it such that 2 plus 2 equals 5, or seems to equal 5 to me right now. That 2 plus 3 seems to equal 5 to me right now, but tomorrow that 2 plus 3 equals 4, and seems to equal 4 to me then, and that seems absolutely right. If that's right, then I can't even trust these very basic mathematical and geometrical truths that I've held to for so long. We've now reached radical Cartesian doubt. It seems that every one of my beliefs, every one of my prior commitments, has been called into doubt. And at this point, Descartes asks, is there any belief I cannot possibly be deceived about? Is there anything that I can know with absolute certainty? And he says, there is. There's one thing that I can know with such absolute certainty. I am. I exist. Cogito ergo sum, he says in his discourse on methods. I think, therefore I am. I can't possibly doubt this belief. I can't possibly doubt this thought, because in doubting it, I am thinking, and so I must exist. Something must be doing this doubting. Whatever it is must have some kind of existence. I think, therefore I am. What am I? Well, at this point, not much. I'm a thinking thing, a mind. I'm not embodied. I don't have these hands. I don't have a body. The external world may not exist. It may just be a disembodied mind. But at least as a mind, I exist. Descartes wants to know then, can I go any further? Can I pick up Can I pick up some thread in this idea that I think, therefore I exist, and continue rebuilding the entire edifice of human knowledge? And he answers that he can. The method Descartes takes up moving forward is to examine this particular belief, I think, therefore I am, and note that it is both vivid and clear, or in other translations it says clear and distinct. To say that it's vivid is to say that it imposes itself on me. It's not muddled or confused. I know exactly the content of this idea. And to say that it is clear is to say that I could not confuse it with some other idea. This idea is vivid and clear. Are there any others that have this form? And he says, in fact, that there is. I have another vivid and clear idea. My idea of God is vivid and clear. It imposes itself on me. I cannot be mistaken about the content of that idea. It is the idea of a perfect being. And it is clear, distinct. It does not admit of confusion with some other, less perfect idea. And from this, Descartes argues that God must in fact exist, because this idea of a perfect being, must be caused by something. It must either be caused by me or by something external to me. Every idea, he says, has both formal and objective reality. The formal reality of the idea is the reality that it has as an idea, as a thing in my mind. The objective reality is the reality it has in virtue of its representing some object, something out there in the world. The cause of an idea, Descartes argues, must have objective reality that is at least as great as the idea itself. It must have sufficient objective reality to bring about this idea. For most ideas, I have sufficient objective reality as a being that exists. I can conceive of these ideas. They could be figments of my thought. But the idea of God, he says, could not have originated in me, since the idea of God is the idea of an infinite being, and I am merely finite. I am imperfect. I am finite. I could not, on my own, conceive of a perfect and finite being, a perfect infinite being. Therefore, only God could be the source of this idea of God. God must exist, according to Descartes. And once we have God in the picture, the rest is easy. God is omnibenevolent, omniscient, and omnipotent. God would never set out to deceive God's creatures. God wants us to have knowledge of creation. As such, I can trust my faculties insofar as I use them according to God's design. I'm not going to be misled by my intellect or by my senses, so long as I use them in appropriate ways. Now, in Meditation 4, Descartes notes that I still find myself in error, but he explains this error in terms of God giving us free will. Since God gave us free will, we have the capacity to use our intellect in ways in which it was not intended to be used, in ways in which it might in fact lead us to error. When properly used, the intellect is not a source of error, but when the will takes the intellect beyond its proper use, beyond what the intellect can vividly and clearly perceive, then we find ourselves in error. So here Descartes has, in the end, given us an account of a foundation for human knowledge, first in his own existence and then in the existence of God, upon which he can then prove that his senses are a good guide in most circumstances for how the world actually is, and can reconstruct the entire edifice of human knowledge upon that simple truth he discovered in the cogito. And he can still explain the errors we find ourselves falling into along the way. This seems like a monumental achievement. Descartes thought it was, but for many philosophers, we continue to question whether Descartes' answer to the skeptical worries that he so vividly raised is in fact sufficient to ground all of human knowledge. What if we don't have the clear and vivid, the clear and distinct, vivid and clear idea of God in our own heads? What if we don't have this foundation upon which Descartes constructs all of human knowledge? Then we seem to be trapped just in the cogito. I'm a thinking thing, but I can't know anything beyond that. I know only my own existence. This week we're going to turn to the philosophy of G more and look at a fairly straightforward proof that the external world does in fact exist, that we don't in fact find ourselves trapped in this radical Cartesian doubt. So join me for our next video. Thanks.